I thought it would be really, really fun to start a program that really uses the arts to engage children in their literacy development as a way to continue their growth as readers and writers, but also as a way to engage them in the process of developing their ability to read and write, not just keeping their skills as it is for the test, but really to become thinkers and speakers and listeners.
All students that were going into second grade, third grade, and fourth grade, and even a few fifth grade students, we really wanted anyone who thought that this sounded like a fun thing for them to be able to come.
I'm really thankful for Mary and her support in getting that actually the arts is one of the best ways to engage children in their literacy development. The day starts out, though, with yoga.
My name is Diane, and I'm a professional yoga teacher. I teach yoga almost entirely to children and train those who work with children. In promoting literacy, we want students to choose to make the choice to read. And in yoga, they're learning to make a lot of choices for themselves, looking at their own inner teacher. How can I think for myself? How can I look within myself for both for the answers and for the questions and for the motivation to learn?
Here we go. I am bountiful. I am blissful. I am beautiful in every way.
The practice of yoga creates the opportunity to explore one's own impulses, to study oneself, to explore one's own creativity outward, creativity inward, some self-regulation around the ability to control impulses and how do my impulses affect others. Where does creativity come from? Where does it expand to? How do I harness and regulate the energy around my creativity? Those are all questions that we explore through yoga.
Yoga is really connected to becoming a teacher of yourself. And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about with my students is that every year your teacher changes, but what teacher do you have for your whole life? And the teacher you have for your whole life is yourself.
The goal of yoga for them is to help them feel connected with themselves and with each other and with their surroundings, and also to help them learn how to focus for periods of time.
And so once they finish that time with yoga, they go into their literacy groups. The only part in our day that is really based on assessments. My group, that morning group, is reading comprehension and writing and reflecting on that and thinking about their thoughts within a text.
Doing some nonfiction, some fiction, and some poetry.
And so in that morning time, we've had different texts, and so we've done informational texts where they've kind of read about animal adaptations from different desert animals to forest animals to rainforest animals, and they've kind of gathered information about it, and they've written small stories using that information to share out their comprehension.
The blubber of a walrus can be 6 inches thick. That keeps the animal warm. It is not similar to a human because we don't have a thick coat of blubber.
My particular group, we are working on building words, making words, taking words apart, manipulating sounds. We were reading a chapter book together and discussing that. We're also talking about ways to solve words and to help a partner solve words. So the majority of our work revolves around reading a book that is at their level and also learning how words work and being able to take them apart and put them together.
The idea is about being your own best teacher and beginning to develop as not just readers and writers, but also as listeners and speakers, because the 5 literacies are listening, speaking, viewing, reading, and writing. And those 3 that we often forget are actually very critical to the other 2. So for myself, in terms of that block time, I am still focusing on that, but I'm also focusing on sight words. And then we started to work on vocabulary words to describe things and that kind of thing.
The master of these words by the end of the academy.
The next part of the day would be moving toward our fishbowl discussion, which is a protocol where students learn how to lead their own discussion without having to constantly raise their hands and have one person dominate or have the teacher dominate. The kids really become their own leaders and can take the discussion where they feel is most relevant.
The actual fishbowl is not a real fishbowl like they thought, but a table where you are in the bowl, and if you're at that table, you are adding to the discussion, and you're starting your commentary with certain sentence stems, like I agree with or I disagree with because.
I agree because somebody did make a mistake.
And that helps to build on the discussion. So if you're in the fishbowl, you're having a discussion about what the prompt is, whatever the topic is at the time. And then if you're out of the fishbowl, instead of waiting for a grown-up to point to you and say, yes, you can go in, or raising your hand and waiting to be able to speak, you're using your pencil to do the talking, and you're writing your thoughts down or drawing your thoughts on the pad and then coming into the fishbowl to add to that discussion.
Bugs might like to live in the dead trees, and also when the dead trees rot, then it makes good soil.
We have 3 groups that rotate. So I'll have, let's say, Group A, and we'll focus on looking at the pages within the Great Kapok Tree, kind of identifying the main themes that are happening within there, and then reflecting on it through writing. Daphne's group is, let's say she has Group B that day, she'll focus on the theater aspect. So they'll take the book and then they'll act out parts of the story as a different way to kind of absorb and understand, while also working on their speaking and listening through the acting process. And then Anna's group would have Group C, and they're focusing on the words, descriptive words within the text, and sort of breaking that down. And then each day those groups will kind of rotate through, so they'll all get the same activity from one of us. Our theme for this whole program was, how are we connected? And so when thinking about that, we did a lot of research on books and thinking about the Caroline Wilderness Trail and how we're connected. And we came across the Great Kapok Tree, and we thought that that would be our anchor text for this whole program.
We knew we really wanted to incorporate nature and the nature trail, but we wanted that to be based around a book. Daphne suggested the Great Kapok Tree, and we all read it. It had the theme of nature, also the theme of conservation, and it had a real overarching message of connectedness and how what one person does affects not just another person, but animals or many other people. So that really felt like the right book for us to use as our anchor text or our guide for this entire 3 weeks.
The Great Kapok Tree, A Tale of the Amazon Rainforest by Lynn Cherry.
And so the story is about 2 individuals that come into the Amazon rainforest, and they're loggers. One man points to a giant kapok tree and says, "This is the tree that you should cut down," and then another man begins to whack at the tree and soon falls asleep. And then all of these animals that inhabit the tree come down and begin to whisper in his ear and talk about how important the tree is and how it's a tree of miracles and that the tree is needed for life. And if he chops it down, then he's even destroying himself. The final visitor to the tree is a boy who lives in the jungle with his family and his community. And the boy insists that he shouldn't cut down the tree, that it's needed for life. And the man wakes up and decides to stop chopping the tree down and walks out of the forest. So that's the story itself. We've read it a number of times and we're analyzing it in terms of that domino theory of like what happens that makes another thing happen, that makes another thing happen.
Just today, when we were reading a story in our small reading group, we finished our chapter book and we were noticing how the main character did something which caused something else to happen and something else to happen, and they're really seeing that domino effect kind of all over the place in other books that they read, not just the Great Kapok Tree, with how they treat each other, with if I am doing the right thing, then it's going to help my partner do the right thing. So that's been a really big theme throughout these 3 weeks.
Seeing the dominoes and actually trying to make a domino chain themselves might help them see that it's actually a metaphor for quite a few of other things, from analyzing story structure to building something together, to what happens if we just leave the trash in the garbage and we don't recycle it. So and it's kind of throughout the academy, we've been trying to introduce these ideas and connect them back to how one thing happens that makes another thing happen, that makes another thing happen, which is really domino theory, which isn't something that they really would even be introduced to until college, but it's still a concept that we learn and a life skill that is valuable to learn and to relearn.
So after our case study work, we then have lunch together as a whole, and then we break for some outdoor play just before the Ithaca Children's Garden comes here. The Ithaca Children's Garden uses play for the children to identify problems that they're having and then solve them. And when they're unable to do that, the Ithaca Children's Garden will step in when needed. But it's all about playing together and coming up with ideas and building upon that idea and working together in teamwork for a creative play.
They are playing together in a creative outlet, in a creative way with nature, and building a sense of identity through play, which is the foundation of how we begin our learning as humans and actually is what transfers through our whole lives.